Yes, I brought the legendary Mark McKenna. He's an inker that worked for Marvel and DC for over 25 years. There was over 7,000 inked pages, and he could tell you a lot more about himself than me.
Now, Mark, when you say you're an inker, what does that actually mean?
In comic books, it's assembly line. There's your writer, there's your pencil artist, there's your ink artist, there's your letter, and your colorist. And the pencil artist is the guy who basically has to look at the blank pages, the plot, and then gives the ink artist the pencil drawings, and then it's for the inker to elaborate it over the pencil art.
Now, that's a real collaborative thing because, like I saw Victor's, I saw your pencil drawings.
Yeah,
and the pencil drawings are awesome.
Yep.
But until you start putting the whole ink on everything and start coloring it out, it doesn't really pop off the page.
Right. No, it is for a guy like myself. I've been doing this 26 years, and Victor's still kind of a new guy, so I can kind of like show him things that I've learned over the years. Make his stuff stronger, maybe, or you have to concern yourself with light and shading, darks and lights, and perspective. Things that come closer to you should be darker and heavier handed than things in the background.
Now, what are some of the things you've worked on?
I've done over 425 books in 26 years, and I've worked on Spider-Man. I think I've done every character, maybe except for like the Flash, and maybe I've done them in other books like Justice League, and I think I'm most well known. I did the Punisher for about a year, and I did Iron Man for about a year.
Now, can you tell when you look? I mean, I got to believe that it's a pretty close-knit fraternity of inkers or people who do that sort of stuff. You would know each other. Can you tell other guys work by just looking at the product?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of guys. What's happening now is a lot of guys emulating certain styles, and I wouldn't say they're a poor man's version of somebody, but it is getting harder because in the business you try to you look at stuff that impresses you and you try to either emulate it or get similar to it, and a lot of times that gets lost. But I've been doing this. Like Victor said, I've done over 7,000 pages of art, so I have a certain approach that is mine.
Well, and it's interesting because it's really gone from the old days of comic books where it was kind of a pulp paper, and the color would bleed, and they were kind of pastel-y, and they didn't really have a lot of texture to them. To now, there's as much put into that, maybe even more so than there is to actual story, plot, or anything else.
Right.
It's the imagery that's the most important thing.
Yeah, well, they used to do it on toilet paper, newsprint. They used newsprint paper, what they would do your newspapers on, and the stuff had pulp in it, like you said. It was pulp, And now they have different kinds of paper. I mean, used to get how many comics for $1? 7 or 8. Now you can, one comic is $4 or $5.
Now, go ahead,
he's also, I mean, it's funny because I'm such a geek because I'm looking at it, and kind of during my childhood was when the comic book industry was exploding. I mean, it was just enormous. Like early to mid 90s, things were just as big as they've ever been in that industry. So I'm looking at all of the stuff that Mark's done, and it's like Spider-Man number 375, Amazing Spider-Man 375, and all this other stuff, and I'm like, that's my childhood. Like this entire everything you did is my childhood. And
well, it's amazing because you sit here and I'm 47, he's 23, and you've probably both of us have seen your work.
Yeah,
and that's a pretty amazing thing when you think about how pervasive, how the format of the medium is.
It also makes me feel old.
Well. But that is such a wild. How did you start with it? How did you get into it?
Well, I was a comic collector as a kid. I remember going for a haircut. My mom would give me an extra $1. I'd walked over from the haircut to the stationery when
after looking at the Playboy in the the barber shop. Yeah, they had them back then. Come on, don't tell me. They had them when I was a kid.
Yeah, I think they might have been behind the counter. I'm not sure. But you used to have those spin racks.
Oh yeah,
those type of things. And I would have $1, and I could only buy say 6 or 7 comics. So you had to be very judicial with what you picked. But, I'd always look for the ones where a superhero would be fighting another superhero and stuff that was exciting. Maybe the last part of Spider-Man getting 6 arms or something to this effect. And then I used to basically copy the covers. I used to draw over the covers, literally with tracing paper.
So you trace them and then color them yourself?
Yeah, except I destroyed all the value of those comics that I traced over because now you're putting lines on the comics.
But that is interesting, though, that you basically gave yourself the template to ink, and started that way back then. Even before you knew it was a gig, you were doing it.
Yeah, I guess so. At 13, 14 years old,
That's wild. Hey, what's happening, Mike?
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's a pretty interesting topic. I got a question for you, though. A while back, I had handed in some comics, sold some comics, actually, and the person who I sold them to called another person who was, very informative and gave us some insight on them. And one of the things that they mentioned was the inkers. I guess there's special inkers that come out every once in a while and do a comic or two, and then they're worth a lot more money. Why is that? Could you explain that to me?
Am I answering?
Yeah.
I don't know that it's. There's only been one inker that ever, actually, they said enhanced sales. Terry Austin. When he'd ink a book, they actually would see an increase in sales by him. But there's a few guys that are just maybe independently wealthy. Maybe a Scott Williams who worked on X-Men and stuff with Jim Lee, who when he does a book, it just looks better. A lot of people will pick it up because of the quality of the ink art, but not necessarily. I don't know. Other than, say, Terry Austin and maybe Scott Williams, anybody else that has that kind of quality to them.
Now, that's interesting, though. Now, why are are comic books worth as much as they're worth because of the nostalgia, because of the art, or a combination of the two, do you think?
I don't know. It seems like they're really trying to flood the market right now with newer type artists. I mean, I'm in the newer age of art, but I'm also a fan of, similar to what Deuce is talking about, I'm a fan of Mark McKenna's work on top of that. But these newer artists that are coming out are mirroring a lot of the heavy hitters, guys like Jim Lee, David Finch, and these really big-time detailed artists. And they're flooding the market a lot. So it seems like the values are going down. And if you see with the relaunch of DC right now, it might have done something to the value of things that are already in the market also.
Now, when they, let's say, like I know in music, all right, the guy who makes the money is the guy who owns the publishing on the song. All right, and that may just and really the publishing is simply the lyrics, but there's a lot more that goes into a song than simply the lyrics. Who's the guy who gets rich on a comic book? You know, I mean, is it the guy who writes the story? Is it the guy who draws the pictures? I know it's not the guy who inks because you wouldn't be sitting here listening to it.
Well, what it is we're work for hire. We get paid by the page rate. And there is a royalty incentive after X amount of sales on a book. But in the early 90s, as I was talking to Deuce earlier, all the books, I worked on 6 books that sold almost 500,000 copies or more. And the royalty base would start at, say, 100,000 copies. So if you sold 100,001 copies, you'd make 1% of the cover price. If you're the inker, the writer and the penciler might make.
So that would be 4 cents per in a $4 comic book.
You're correct. Yes, and I did 6 books that sold almost 1 million copies. So it was
a nice little hit.
It was a good hit, and there was a few of them there, So it was a good year. But
yeah, I guess so.
Let's just say, of the 26 years I've been doing it, I had 4 good years.
We're talking to Mark McKenna. He and it's such a strange deal, I love people who make their lives in strange places, different things. You're the only comic book inker I've ever met in my life.
There might only be a couple hundred out there in the whole world,
and that's got to be, how does somebody get into that then? Because, I mean, it's got to be a position, it's got to be a field where it's really a buyer's market.
Well, I started out, believe it or not, I graduated art school of visual arts in New York City. I have a bachelor's of fine arts, which basically, covers a hole on the wall. Really didn't do a lot for my career, but what it did do for me is it introduced me to the new talent coordinator at DC Comics, who was the prospective teacher at School of Visual Arts. And the chairman of the art department in visual arts introduced me to this fella, and I was able to go up to the DC offices because I had that connection through the school. And I did some samples. I was actually working in art supplies, selling art supplies at the time, and I would sit there on the downtime and work on the the samples he'd give me. Basically, taking full size 11 by 17 Xeroxes
and bringing them down.
Well, no, it actually you ink large. You ink full size. Yep. They reduce them. Correct. They reduce 65% the comic book size.
Wow.
So I'd ink these samples. I'd go in thinking I was the cat's meow. I'd go in, show the samples, and I'd say, here I am, give me a job. And he'd say, you're almost there, a couple more years.
Yeah, well, that's got to be a really, now, like, I know when they do animation for when they do animation for films and stuff like that, you have people whose whole gig is just to do the backgrounds and then you have people who do the primary characters and the other stuff. Is it done in that way? Do you ever get things where it's like, all right, we want you to make the superhero. We got the other stuff taken care of.
Well, I'll hire assistants to do my buildings and cars and stuff that I don't want to do anymore. But and it has to be somebody who I can overlook and make sure that the end result is going to be quality, because it's my name on it, not his.
Yeah,
I pay somebody to help me, go. So editors listening to me, but. I don't want to be lazy about it, but sometimes I'm actually employing a guy who's trying to work his way into the business. So they get to see what a kid puts his name on the background on the graffiti.
Is that how it's done?
I've actually
WPDH. I hate it when the commercials end and I'm having great conversations. 8:33. I'm a rock and roll 101.5 WPDH. We're just hanging out with Victor Castor and Mark McKenna, and just talking about different things in the comic book world and the world of just inking stuff. When is Comic-Con down in the city there, my brother?
Comic-Con's going to be on October 13th through the 16th. The first day is professional hours, but majority of the fans are going to be on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Saturday being the heaviest day.
And Mark, will you be down there as well?
I'm not going this year.
You're not going?
It's one of those things where I'm 70 miles out of New York. It's like too far but too close. And I also had some funny things happen at the show last year. I was at a booth with two other friends, and I turned my back, and somebody walked off with one of my friend's Batman covers.
No way.
$1,500 cover.
Ouch.
Yeah, it didn't make for a happy weekend.
Uh-oh.
So don't go steal stuff from these guys.
Yeah, don't be more like Batman and less like one of his villains. You know what I mean? If you're gonna, I guarantee you he was dressed up like the Riddler or something when he took it too.
Hi, Maureen. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
What's up, baby?
I was listening earlier before you went on with the guys from the comics.
Yeah.
The bear thing.
Oh, the guy. Now, this is the story we were talking about before we got in with Victor and Mark. This is a gentleman who he decided that the way to kill his wife was to kill a bear, gut it, put the bear suit on, and then, as a bear, try to maintain this crime or try to perpetrate this crime. And Maureen, this doesn't fly for you? Does it remind you of somebody?
No, I just had a question. Was he drunk? If he was drunk, did he think he didn't have enough beer muscles to kill the bear, or was it hunting season?
I don't know. We haven't got that part of it. He
was drinking, yes.
He was drinking. We don't know exactly how he planned to procure the bear.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Just curious. Maybe it was hunting season. That's why I thought it wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, like he'd be out there and somebody, hey, there's a bear, shoot it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, that's the thing. When I get drunk, I think it's a good idea to fall asleep on the couch watching Howard the Duck on Netflix. This guy thinks it's a good idea to gut a bear and try to kill his wife. So who's hardcore and who's the loser?
Yes,
you know what
exactly.
I mean?
I hear you, my brother. Hey, thanks for calling, Maureen. Hey, we got a quick call here. How you doing there, Matt? What's going on?
Hey guys, yeah, I was listening, and about how about inking, and definitely about how backgrounds are tedious as can be.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact because a buddy of mine, Coop, you've actually met him a couple times. He approached you at Sweeney's back on St. Patty's Day.
Okay.
About a webcomic that he and I do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he, I actually, with the backgrounds, I actually let him do most of them because
it's tedious.
I started.
Much like this call is becoming.
sorry,
man.
Guys.
No, that's okay, man. I'm just funning with you, brother. I'm just funning with you. No, but I know, but it's a really interesting. We were just talking about this off air and about, like, you do your webcomic, and how many hits do you get for it?
We get probably about, I'd say maybe near 100 a week. Not many right now, but we're still spreading the word around. We're actually going to be at Comic-Con on that Saturday to try to promote it as well as check out Comic-Con.
That's awesome, man. Hey, I'll tell you what you do. Give us an email with the link, and we'll put it up on our page so folks can check it out, okay?
All right. Cool deal.
All right. So we appreciate it, man. You have a good day, okay, buddy?
You too.
All right. That's got to be the thing. If you were going to give any advice, Mark, to anybody out there starting out, because there are a lot of people who are comic book fans and may want to get into this. I know so many guys who are great artists, and especially in that style, that it seems to me that it's like, how do you rise? How do you get above it? I mean, what is that one piece of advice you would give to these guys that would say, here's what you want to do?
I would say don't do it. Well, honestly, it's very hard to do. Actually, if you look at the submissions page at Marvel or DC, they don't even accept submissions. You need to do what this gentleman on the phone is doing. Go to Comic-Con. They have portfolio reviews at the major comic companies. You need to show them your stuff. You need to separate your stuff. If you're a writer, you can't be showing them pencil and ink pages because they want to know what your expertise is. Are you the penciler? Are you the writer? Are you the colorist? So you have to break it down and show them and let them pick what your strongest points are. And, of course, it's not easy to be objective about your own work.
Yeah, of course, it never is. No, but the funny thing is, the unfortunate thing is that a lot of times the more talented somebody is, the harsher they are on their work.
Yeah, I could see actually being a good thing.
But I mean, as far as moving forward, I always tell people the best life in the world is stupid with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, very true. Yeah,
if you got that, life is easy.
I have done a ton of portfolio reviews in the last 20 some odd years at New York comic shows, and I've only met a handful of guys that actually felt had potential to be something. If they kept at it. And one of the guys actually. His name is Rudolfo DiMaggio. When I got off, I was set up to do a 40-minute portfolio review, and as I got off the line, they excused me to go back to my table.
Yeah.
This guy got off the line and followed me back to my table. I says, "There's another guy coming on after." He goes, "I want you to see my work." And when he showed me his work, I thought he was amazing. And I showed his samples to my editor up at Marvel at the time. He says, "I see this stuff all the time." And clearly he didn't know what he was talking about because the guy became a superstar within 2 years, got bored of comics, and now was doing Predator, Batman stuff for Dark Horse. And I think he does storyboards now in the movie industry.
That's why, and that's the thing I always tell people, is that, if you stay with what you dream about, you may not get exactly what you're looking for, but you will find something in your field. And that's interesting right there because the storyboards, no movie is made without being completely drawn first.
Right. No, there's a lot of guys that make their living that come from comics,
So
storyboards.
That's an interesting way to look. Hey, man, it was really
Thank
fascinating.
You. Thanks again.
All right.